Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the special Joint Finance and Claims and Board of Education Finance Committee meeting. My name is Jim Freyer. I'm the chairman of the Finance Committee. With us this evening, we have Mayor Barbara Smith. We have Superintendent Estrella, and we have Linda Azamati, the CFO of the Board of Ed. And sitting next to me on my right is Jared Schmidt, CFO of the city. And I'll let everybody down there introduce themselves on the Board of Ed.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sherry McCready Pritchett. I am the chair of the Finance Committee meeting. And with me tonight, I have Garrett Oliver, Marcus Jaime, and Diana Carpio.
And over here, I have members of the Finance Committee, Joanne Lopez, and on line, Anne Winterstrand. And we have sitting with us is the president of the president of the City Council, Josh Goldstein. We'll start off with the public participation. Before we start with the public participation, I'd like to introduce the mayor, Barbara Smith, to say a few words, and then followed by Superintendent Estrella.
Thank you very much, Mr. Freyer. Thank you for everyone being here tonight and participating in the City and Board of Education budget process. I always want to take a moment to acknowledge my dear friend, Greg Burnett, whom we lost last year, because this meeting is a result of Greg's efforts about 6 or 7 years ago to create an opportunity for more opportunities for the public to speak, and the Board of Education and Norwalk Public Schools to present their needs to the city as the city is working on the budget, so that these needs can be considered as we set the budget. And so it's really important that we work together and make decisions that are in the best interests of our students, families, and all the residents of Norwalk. I also want to take a moment, as I have done year after year, to thank our former mayor, Harry Rilling, for investing in education. You know, I was a former teacher. My kids went through our schools, and I know how underfunded our schools were before Mayor Rilling came in, and how our schools had been left neglected. And so he turned things around. He more than doubled the operating budget and committed to building new schools. And I would like to say that I am committed to continuing that 25-year school building plan and to assuring proper funding to support our students and teachers and staff who work with them. Although I've been through many budget seasons as a council member, this is the first that I am leading it as your mayor. We have had some tight budget seasons recently, and I don't expect this year to be any different. In fact, it's possible that it's going to be even tighter. As a city, we have the responsibility, and we must provide proper funding for our schools and for our kids, because it's the most important thing we do, is grow our kids up to be good citizens. And I look forward to working together with everybody in order to do that. All of the MPS, Board of Education, Common Council, we're in this together. As a city, we want to continue to properly fund our schools, but we do also have the responsibility to keep our residents safe and to provide important services that affect public health and the quality of life every day. Our police and fire departments, public works, community services, enforcement, recreational parks, and all of the hardworking people who keep the city of Norwalk running. I look forward to increased stakeholder engagement, improved communication, working together with everybody for our families as we navigate this year's budget cycle. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Superintendent Estrella.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us as we continue this important conversation around the operating and capital budget for the Board of Education in collaboration with the city. I know last year was a complex year for everyone as we navigated grant reductions and limitations in resources that placed us in a predicament of making tough decisions. we're hoping that this year, as we look forward and focus on the work ahead, that we go back to a practice that talking about Mayor Reeling started 6 years ago when Greg Burnett designed this meeting, and we engage in conversations about the importance of having a collaborative and respectful process, and making sure that we had early engagement around the budget process so that both the city and the Board of Education was clear around what were some of the levers that were creating pressures for the city as well as the district in terms of the work that we needed to do to ensure that both the city and the Board of Education had a balanced budget. So I'm hoping as we move forward in this process that we, as in my discussion with Mayor Smith, and as in prior practice with Mayor Reeling, that we can have collaborative conversation around the needs of the district, knowing that a lot has been lost and we are operating at a minimum right now. And in order for us to effectively provide the services that have yielded the outcomes that we have thus far, we need at a minimum to sustain what we have. Acknowledging that the city also has difficult choices to make and that budgets are tight, we also have to be realistic that the district has lost a lot over the course of the past several years, particularly with some of the federal challenges that we have already experienced and anticipate to continue to experience. So I'm hoping that tonight continues to open the dialogue amongst us, but also provides the public, particularly our parents and community members that are taxpayers, an opportunity to have an understanding of what's happening, what are the drivers ahead, and our hopes to what we hope to accomplish together for the betterment of our schools that will yield better outcomes for our students. So thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'd also like to ask Sherry if you would like to say a few words.
Sure. Thank you, Jim. On behalf of the Norwalk Board of Education and the Finance Committee, I want to thank our residents, city officials, and our colleagues for joining us tonight. We appreciate your time, your interest, and your continued engagement in the important work that we share. These joint public meetings reflect our commitment to collaboration and open dialogue as we work together to support Norwalk's students and community. We look forward to a respectful and productive discussion this evening. Thank you. Back to you, Jim.
Thank you, Sherry. I would just like to say a couple of words too before we get going. I think this meeting this evening is a continuation of some of the efforts that we began last year with both finance committees being able to share information and continue a dialogue. And so the citizens of Norwalk can gain a better understanding of the operating budget, its goals, objectives, key drivers, and challenges for the upcoming 26-27 budget year. This evening, we'll focus on the operating budget alone. The Board of Education has approved their budget, a tentative budget, and we'll hear more about that this evening, relating to its drivers and how it impacts the spending requests that they've been made. We'll also get an update from the city on their expectations and an outlook for their requirements. I think it goes without saying that every Norwalker should have an opportunity to understand and comment on how their tax dollars are spent. So this is essential that we as committee members comprehend the priorities and supporting those that support those funding requests. We also must balance those needs against the overall economic impact of the city and tax burden on its people. This should not be a budget battle between the city and the Board of Education. It should be a collaborative process, creative innovative problem-solving exercise between the two groups, as well as engaging the state legislature delegation. In the next few weeks, our CFO, Jared Schmidt, will be consolidating the Board of Education and the city's operating budgets for presentation to the BET and the council on February 9th. I think that's the right date. Shortly after that, the council and the BET will review that, and the council will set the caps, and the BET will do their annual deep dive through the details of each departmental budget. So I would also like to encourage everybody that this is not the last time we're going to be discussing this. Citizens will have a number of other opportunities coming up, particularly the Finance and Claims Committee on February 12th. We'll have another public hearing on the operating budget. The Board of Estimate and Taxation will, in addition, will have a public hearing on March 25th. And the capital budget will have a hearing on Thursday, February 5th, sponsored by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So having said that, I'd like to turn it over for the rest of the meeting to our two CFOs from the Board of Ed and from the city to present what we have to date. These are still tentative. There's still work to be done, polishing and I don't want to say massaging, but polishing and finalizing the numbers. After which we'll open it up for discussion. But before that, I think what we ought to do is open up the opportunity for public participation. Public participation is anybody that would like to speak on the budget, any comments that they have on the budget. It's only the operating budget that we're soliciting comments for tonight, and you'll have 3 minutes to make those comments. They'll both be either in the chambers here tonight, or actually tonight, and also anybody that's online has the ability to talk and give us their comments. So is there anybody in the audience here? We'll start there, and that would like to speak this evening.
Kevin, I have a sign sheet. We have three individuals here in the chambers. Maria Wyslinski, the first speaker. And up next will be Jen. No.
Go ahead.
Can I start? Okay. Good evening. My name is Maria Myslinski. I live at 27 Park Hill Avenue. First, I'd like to acknowledge that since the last time I spoke, the city did step up and find additional funding that helped save many positions and preserve important music and arts program. We're all grateful for that, and it mattered to our students, our families, and our staff. I get emotional. Okay. So now we're entering a new budget cycle with a new mayor, some new members of the Board of Education, and some new elected city officials. I see real opportunity in that, and I think hopefully the community does too. The tentative operating budget has been submitted, and over the next few months, the city will review it through meetings and hearings like this one. Tonight's joint meeting is an important first step. I want to strongly emphasize this. Our schools must receive the funding necessary to provide high-quality education for our students and the resources our educators need to succeed. This should not be optional. It is foundational to the future of Norwalk. We also know that when services are not available in district, outplacing students is incredibly expensive, financially for the city and also emotionally for families. That is why it is so important to invest in strong programs here at home, which I know we are actually doing. I've heard that our transition programs like Project Search and Next Steps are so strong that students are actually being outplaced into Norwalk from other districts. If that's the case, it means two important things. These programs bring resources to our district, and they represent something Norwalk is doing exceptionally well. And yet most people have never even heard of these programs that we're offering. They deserve to be expanded, supported, and given some extra love because they set us apart and directly serve students who need us most. I think I can speak for many when I say that we hope to see continued improvements in transparency, communication, and the working relationship between the BOE and the city. Families should not be left guessing, worrying, or finding out after the fact. Clear, consistent communication builds trust, something that certainly needs building after the last budget cycle. But we also need to change the pattern we've fallen into too many times, struggling through cuts, community outrage, and then suddenly finding money at the end. If there's money to save programs and staff, then offer it up front. Let's work together now openly and honestly instead of playing budget games that create fear and instability for students, educators, and families. If we want people to move to Norwalk and stay in Norwalk, then we must prioritize our schools. We all know families are choosing surrounding communities
30 seconds
because they feel they get a better education. That should not be Norwalk's story. So I ask you again, what does the city truly prioritize? New apartment buildings or the children who live here now and will grow up to become the next generation of leaders, business owners, educators, public servants, and elected officials? Will our kids remember opportunities and investment, or will they remember annual fights to keep teachers, programs, and support services in place? We can do better, and we must. I'm choosing to have faith that this year will be different, that together the BOE and the city will build a budget that is transparent, collaborative, student-centered, and forward-thinking. Our kids, our educators, and our community deserve nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening. My name is John Riccici. I live at 5 Redwood Road. I'm also the father of 2 children who attend Wolf Pit Elementary School. First, I'd like to welcome our newly elected mayor, Barbara Smith, as well as the new members of the Board of Education. Thank you for your service and thank you for the time you're putting into this important work. As you focus on reviewing and approving the proposed budget for the coming school year, I'd like to briefly share a primary concern from our family's perspective. Last year's budget crisis resulted in the loss of teacher headcounts, which led directly to increased class sizes. This year, we've seen a very real and noticeable difference in our son's day-to-day experience because of the higher student-to-teacher ratio. Larger class sizes place significant strain on teachers and school administrations. More time is understandably spent managing behavioral issues, which means less time for instruction and individualized support. From our son, this has translated into frequent distractions and disruptions to his learning. He used to generally enjoy going to school. This year, that enthusiasm has changed, and as parents, that's been difficult to watch. We're sharing this perspective so that it can be considered as part of the budget approval process. Our family has directly experienced the impact that budget cuts can have on students. We respectfully ask that you keep these real outcomes in mind as decisions are made. Thank you for listening, for your commitment to our schools.
Thank you.
Next is Nick Z.
Zerzan.
Zerzan, which address?
1 Gina.
G.
1 Gene Avenue. Hi, Nick Zerzan, 1 Gene Avenue. I'm a father of 3 children in Norwalk Public Schools. First off, I'd like to congratulate you, and it's great to see you up there, Mayor Smith. And I liked how you give recognition to your predecessor, Mayor Reiling. He gave his life to the city, and we appreciate that. And Mrs. Carpio, thank you for your service, and all you Board of Ed members, and congratulations to you guys and the new members stepping in. We appreciate that. I don't want to waste too much time with that, but I'd like to, again, sort of, I'm kind of a one-trick pony, but here I go. I'd really like to advocate for fully funding the school budget. My kids and myself have been huge beneficiaries of the trajectory, like you talked about, the improvements in the school. And I don't want to bring up last year's budget crisis. We all sort of saw it coming, and it started out in the beginning here. And I know there's sort of like a popular theme that there's no inflation, everything is good, everyone's doing well, the costs are the same or lower than they were. Maybe true at the gas station, I think it was $2.74, but at the grocery store, it's, $3.20, $3.50 a week. So I feel the increases, I'm sure the teachers do. God bless our wonderful teachers. I think we have like a dream team at the schools, all three of my children's schools, from the administration on down. We've had fantastic people, and I appreciate all you guys working collaboratively to make that happen. And I appreciate the increase in pay. But the reality is this budget, the lion's share of it is very fixed, right? It's the teacher's salaries. They deserve all the increases they get, hopefully more. The paras, you talked about parents already losing services. No one wanted to lose any of that music and art stuff. It wasn't a choice that anyone wanted to make, thank God. There was that Hail Mary. We can't expect Dr. Estrella to pull off a moonshot, and some others that were very attentive as far as funding the school lunches, which actually ended up saving money to keep that intact. And I gotta tell you, some people don't appreciate the value of that, but being on a school governance council and hearing some parents, teachers, and otherwise explain how important and vital it is to keep that intact, and the fact that you guys were able to pull that off is a pure miracle.
30 seconds remaining.
Thank God to the McCords, but the reality is we have only so much money, and we can't expect, to get more services for less money. There was Doge-like cuts at the central office already. The study said that, we would benefit and continue this upward trajectory by increasing some of these services. So let's be realistic here and not like set the bar super low and then wait till the last minute and have need a bigger room stuff going on. And everyone's shaking their fist. What happened? It's happening now. It's going to happen then. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
Anyone else in the chambers?
James, do we have everybody online?
Amanda Fraser.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you so much. Good evening. Thank you for your time to speak here tonight. I am a parent and PTA president at the Kendall College and Career Academy. My daughter is in 2nd grade, and I have been deeply involved in the school since she started there in kindergarten. KCCA is a vibrant, diverse, and warm community. The educators, staff, and students have built a culture of respect, collaboration, and fun that you can feel the moment you step through the doors of the school. As a parent and PTA president, I feel it is my duty to protect that and foster its growth. Our staff leaders and parent leaders should be focused on this culture and community, not fighting every day for the resources we need just to get by. In order to do so, we need your help, all of you. We need to build better and stronger relationships, plans, and roadmaps to ensure that our schools receive the funding they need to truly foster and educate our children. As I mentioned, I've been deeply involved for 3 years now, and we have had to fight and scratch to ensure our schools get the bare minimum to survive. There are huge gaps in funding we need to truly make this district shine the way that I know it can. We cannot have another budget cycle like last year. I hope you all heard us loud and clear last year and right now that we need to fund our schools, and we need to do it now. I urge you all to find a way to fund the BOE fully and work towards a path to improve the process and funding going forward. I appreciate the work you all have done and will do to support our students. I am really encouraged by the statements you all made at the beginning of this meeting, and I look forward to seeing how this process and everything goes forward this year and the major improvements I hope you all will make. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. James, anybody else?
Diane Lorcella.
Good evening, Chair Frere and all that are assembled. First wanted to congratulate Barbara Smith, the council, and the Board of Education members. Looking forward to a robust and productive year. Tonight, we're focusing on the operating budget. My name for the record is Diane Lorcella, 21 Little Fox Lane. Over the years, I have actually looked at the budget line by line, depending upon what particular issue I thought was in need of some assistance, advice. So the following the following list is short, and I will be happy to speak with any of you one-on-one or at future meetings. in an effort to save money in the operating budget so we can use that money to support our school, but also the rest of the city and to save taxpayers money. Number one, any place possible, both Board of Ed and the city needs to look at combining additional services as much as possible. For example, as I've said before, in the recycling and waste management list or itemized, there's no reason to have two separate efforts, even though both of these efforts are not really optimizing, increasing our recycling rate, and our trash hauling rates are going up and flat. We are not properly looking at how to reduce trash and increase recycling and reducing trash. I think it's time that we combine those two efforts under one roof of DPW and that division. And that will save tons of money, literally and figuratively. Number two, look to regional approaches for purchases and services. It does happen on occasion, I think, with fuel oil, but very rarely. And I think this too will save you lots of money. Look to your other school districts and do it seriously this time. Number three, while you're at it, let's place all the Board of Education meetings on the city website homepage because they are part of our city and their platform is not that easy to contact, to get agendas out of anyway. Number four, get a full-time professional grant czar with proper support and maybe just have it one for the entire city because we have utilized our senior staff to do things that we never wanted to pay them for. Let's just use them for wordsmithing to help the professional full-time staff person that we do not still have. Number five, finally, on energy policy.
30 seconds remaining.
We have squandered millions of dollars for over at least the last 10, 12, 15 years, missed opportunity. Prop 80% the investment, reduce fossil fuel, gas, and electricity. It's not budget. That's where
You're at 3 minutes.
Last management the board trash by 20%. By 20. This is the way we're going to.
Diane, I think you're breaking up. Could you just wrap it up now?
Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Appreciate it. James, do we have somebody else on the line? Anybody?
Angela Dorado.
Go ahead, Angela. Angela, did you just mute yourself? James, maybe we can come back to Angela. Is there anyone else we have?
There's no one else other than Angela.
Yes, hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Angela Giraldo, 158 Perry Avenue. I am here to ask you to please allocate the funds necessary to fully staff Silvermine Dual Language School, as it was approved, represented to families, and submitted to the state. I want to begin by sharing that I ultimately had no viable choice but to remove my daughter from Silvermine because the program was not being implemented as approved. That was not a decision I wanted to make. Silvermine must be funded so that each grade has 4 classes with certified teachers and all required intervention and special education services. This isn't extra or optional. It's the basic structure of the dual language program. The district has cut 4th and 5th grades to only 3 classes instead of 4, and assigned only 1 Spanish teacher instead of 2. The district has successfully hired Spanish language teachers for other grades at Silvermine. So this isn't a hiring problem. It's a resource allocation problem. It's important to note that the minimum number of students per class is 15, and Silvermine has consistently had the required number of students to form 4 classes for 4th and 5th grade. There is no question that these additional classes and teachers are necessary and fully justified. When the school cuts a class, students lose Spanish instructional time. When staffing is short, intervention and special education services shrink to fit what the school can offer instead of what students actually need. For approximately 3 years, my daughter was not provided with dedicated Spanish language intervention services, which are required by the dual language model. Parents were not notified of this reduction. I only became aware after multiple inquiries about the program's implementation. Silvermine is a magnet school, and magnet status carries obligations such as program
30 seconds remaining.
equitable access, and compliance with state and federal requirements. The solution is clear and achievable. Fund 4 classes per grade with certified bilingual staff. Ensure 2 Spanish and 2 English teachers per grade, and provide intervention and special education services in both languages. Families did not sign up for a scaled-down program. Families should not have to discover service reductions through inquiry.
30 minutes.
And should not bear the cost of structural underfunding. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. James, is there anyone else online?
There are none, Mr. Freyer.
If there's nobody else that would like to comment in the audience, we will close public participation. Okay, public participation is closed at 6:33. Thank you. We'd also like to mention that we have 2 other city council members present, Jalen Steve and Nicole Eady. So thank you for joining us this evening. Next on the list is that we want to go into presentations by both our respective CFOs. I'll leave it up to either one of you, whichever one wants to hear you. Point to him.
Jerry Zolda.
Okay.
I'm sorry, one other thing. By virtue.
By months.
By a month. Sorry, one thing by virtue of knowledge is that I also want to congratulate Howard White, who's the new chair of the Board of Education. Want to just recognize that he's here as well and congratulate you on your recent victory. Sorry.
Thank you. Chips made, do we have copies? We just give them to the.
Yeah, there's.
Cities out. Yeah.
There's one.
That's the.
I'm sorry, the city's.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff.
They're getting the copies.
That's one thing. I'll just. All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks to the public game, mayor and chairman, thank you. I'm gonna do a quick presentation, and what I want to do is cover a 3-year period, looking back 1 year, look at the current year, and then looking at the FY27 budget and what the challenges are, and some of the ways that we're trying to meet those challenges head on. go to that first slide. So when we talk about the FY25 budget, so that was last year, and we finished the annual report. I'm really happy to say that we got the report done on time, which, you know, you might say, so you did your job. Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you. It's becoming more and more commonplace that cities are not able to get their annual reports done on time. And so it's it's a point of pride for us and for the city. And I want to specifically thank Chitsmay Lamb, our comptroller who's in the audience. Thanks, Chitsmay, to you and your staff for all the time you put in, and also to our auditor, to Linda and his staff, and Kristen on his staff for their efforts in it too. It was a very good team effort, and it requires months and months of work. And so it was a very, very good outcome. So thank you all. Going to cover some highlights of the annual report. We had long-term liabilities that increased slightly. Nothing out of the ordinary, or nothing that's going to cause any concerns from the rating agencies. With our pension ADEC, which is we have the actuary do their analysis, and they tell us how much we should be contributing each year to our pension funds. And we contributed 100% to each of the pension funds. Our pension investment returns were another very strong year. The pension funds in total were 10.6% returns. And the OPEB funds, we have a little different portfolio for the OPEB funds, were 13.8%. And OPEB, for those of you who don't know, it's other post-employment benefits, which is basically us saving for future health insurance benefits for retirees. We also invest money, our operating cash. We are very limited in what we can invest that money in. It has to be very high grade, AAA rated investments, mostly government. So those investments they spiked probably 2 years ago. We were fortunate in this past budget year that we saw an increase in what we had budgeted by $2.6 million. However, year over year, the actual amount started to dip down for the first time in a number of years. We'd seen them climb for a number of years, and now they're starting to go down because of the rates that are being reduced. And so for year over year was about a $1.5 million reduction. And I'll talk more about that too when we talk about the challenges. Our fund balance, this is a bit of a good news, bad news here. We did budget $8 million to be used in fund balance for FY25. Fortunately, due to department heads being responsible and the city overall being more responsible, and some things going our way on the revenue side, we were able to not have to use quite as much. So we used 5.8 million instead of the 8 million. So that was good. It's still not the direction that we want to be going in. We need to be adding to the fund balance and not reducing it every year. Our internal service fund, we had a reduction in the net position. I'm going to get into this in more detail later on in the slides. $8.6 million reduction in that net position. And then, as is pretty typical, our property tax revenue represented 80% of all the city's revenue. Next slide, please. So we'll flip the page to the FY26 budget, current year. So this is more of an update. We are halfway through the year at this point, and we've had a handful of fairly significant movements or changes in the budget. We had a sale of a city property that we had actually budgeted to come to fruition in FY 25, but just because of the timing and the timing of closing on that sale of the property, it ended up being pushed into FY 26. So it was a negative for FY 25, but it helps us in FY 26. And that was $3.3 million. We're continuing to implement the changes in the collective bargaining agreements. There were 6 of them that we had to negotiate, and we wrapped those up late in the springtime, and that resulted in definitely increased salaries and other related costs. Board of Education increases based on a deal that we worked with the Board of Education in order to provide additional funding and restore some programs. That funding was increased during this fiscal year, during the FY 26 fiscal year. We added $3 million thanks to municipal grant and aid from the legislature that was added to the Board of Education budget. In addition, there was a carry forward of $1.5 million from FY 25. So a total of $4.5 million. In addition, it was not budgeted in the current fiscal year. We had to add $500,000 to the police department for school security. And this is providing security around all the schools throughout the city. Next slide, please. Okay, so here, this is what we're dealing with now, the FY 27 budget challenges. At the top of the list, as it has been for the last 3 years, is the reval phase. And this is from the FY 23 revaluation, which I feel like a broken record here. It created a shift in the balance of the grand list away from commercial and more toward residential properties. And so the real challenge here is trying to mitigate the impact of the tax increase that is going to hit residential homeowners. And so that's at the top of the list, and one of the things that we're trying to mitigate against. Employee health insurance, we piggyback off of the state's state partnership plan 2.0. And we have been involved in webinars with the state to get updates on that. They're anticipating significant increases between 12 and 14% in FY 27. We will be meeting with our consultant next week, so we have a better understanding of what exactly that means for the city side. So our consultant will take a look at those increases and look at our staffing and be able to give us a much better, more precise number of what we'll need to contribute to city employee healthcare. So in addition to the normal costs that hit health insurance over the last few years, we've actually relied on our internal service fund and the balances. We had some high balances in the internal service fund that we were able to use in order to mitigate increased taxes. We've used that as much as we possibly can, and at this point, starting in FY 27, we are going to have to appropriate the full amount as required by our consultant to fully fund our healthcare costs. And again, that's in addition to the normal increases, the market increases that we're seeing. The tentative approved BOE budget, you will find that there's a difference between what I believe the budget increase to be and what the Board of Ed believes the increase to be. I have it at 7.8%, at a $19 million increase. This is based on a difference in what you put into the base of the budget. So this is an increase from FY 26 to FY 27. So what you assume for the FY 26 budget is going to impact whatever that percentage increase is. And so we can talk more about the differences in our different percentages. I can say from my standpoint, we've had precedent and a history of basically pinning the FY 26, the base year budget, to whatever the original adopted budget was. In this case, I made an adjustment for the 7.8% to add into that the cost of music programs, orchestra, which was about $1.5 million. So I took the original adopted and added $1.5 million to it, because I think that that's an area that was very clear last year that nobody wants to see that reduced. It should be, part of their structural budget and should be added into it. So I made that deviation, that concession from what we've typically done. I thought it was a fair thing to do. Again, I talked about school security funding. We will permanently put that into the FY 26, into the FY 27 budget proposal next year, and it's up over $600,000 based on our analysis and working with the police department and what that will cost. We have some challenges in the area of property tax revenue, in the sense that in FY 26, in the current year, we budgeted additional revenue related to a tax sale. So this is a tax sale of properties that are delinquent in paying their taxes, and that helps to bring in that revenue, that property tax revenue that has been outstanding for a year or 2 or 3 or more years. So we do that every other year. We do a tax sale every other year. The revenue for the next sale is projected to come in this year, and so that revenue will not be there next year in FY 27. Because also related to property tax revenue, in most cases, when we're not phasing in a revaluation, if there's an increase in the value of a commercial property and new development that comes online, typically what we can do is, let's say it adds value of $10 million to the grand list. Normally, what we could do is we could take that full amount, that $10 million assessed value, and we can put that into the grand list. Because we're in a reval phase-in period, we have to phase in those increases as well. So those that amount eventually we would get the full $10 million, but because it's a phase-in, we have to phase that in over the term that's remaining in the phase-in period. In this case, 2 years. I talked about it earlier, the collective bargaining agreements. We have 6 of them. Those are we have the compounding effect of those, because they became effective on July 1st, 2024, and so there are a couple of years worth of increases that are affecting the FY 27 budget that we're going to have to account for and make sure we have the funding in there for. We're finding ways to mitigate against the increases and the increase in spending and the resulting tax increases. One of the things that we're looking at is employee health insurance. We're also going to work with our consultant to see if there are other ways that we can structure our healthcare plan, to restructure the benefits, to see if there are efficiencies that we can find and be able to reduce those costs. We've talked about vehicle registration in the past. So this is an effort that we started almost a year ago now. We're starting to see the fruits of our labor there. Basically what this is that we have a company that we hired to go around the city and identify those vehicles that are not registered in Norwalk, but should be. And in some cases, those vehicles may not have been registered for a number of years, and in which case we can go back and we can collect those back taxes that they owe, in addition to getting them on the books for future years as well. So this is really, it's an issue of fairness, where we have law-abiding property taxpayers who are effectively pulling the freight for people who are not. And so this is something that was important for us to get started on, and we're starting to see the benefits of that now. Our building permit revenue is continuing to stay at a high level. We're hoping that with the developments that are going on, that we will continue to see that trend. As we meet with the departments, the reviews are thorough, and we're looking at different efficiencies that they're able to find, and also just generally tightening the budgets and making sure they get what they need, but only what they need. We are able to, we've talked about this, and it's really a phenomenal thing that really makes Norwalk unique. Our OPEB fund is more than 100% funded. It's at about 120%, which it's just amazing. And so what that's going to enable us to do is that we can do a pause on a year of funding that, and not really sacrifice anything. We would still keep it above 100% funded. So those are the details and some of the challenges and things that we're doing to help address those challenges. I've also included a slide that Mr. Frere mentioned, just to identify those upcoming dates. A couple of them involve a public hearing, or specifically public hearings for anybody who wants to come back and present and give your comments. And we also do, as Mr. Frere mentioned, pretty much before every meeting, there's an opportunity for public comment. So, there's no shortage of opportunities. So thank you all for coming, and appreciate your attention this evening.
Thank you, Jared. Mr. Admani. Tom's putting up the slide.
Thank you, Tom. Good evening, members of the Finance Committee, members of the public. Congratulations to the WOE Finance Committee. We're meeting for the first time. So congrats to you on joining the committee, and congrats Mayor Smith on your election and for chairing this session. So before we get started, I wanted to share with the public that as part of this process, and as we do each year, we produce a budget book. And you will receive copies of that, but we have already uploaded the tentative approved budget book, which is the budget we're discussing. It's on the website as we speak. This QR code will get you to the budget website and to the budget book. But if you just go to the Board of Ed website, to the finance department, you'll see details of the budget book. Included in this budget book is obviously the superintendent's message, a greater detail of the overview and highlights that I'll go over. And then we'll also include in there our budget drivers. Connecticut funds education differently than most states. So what we wanted to do in this budget book is also to provide an opportunity for people to learn how education funding is conducted in the state. So that is also included under the organizational section of the budget book. And we talk about the factors that are influencing this budget. This budget book also has a financial section, which is very detailed. The financial section not only includes our budget assumptions, but the financial section also includes line item detail of the general fund with a 5-year history. So there are 3 years of actual spends there's the current budget, and there's the budget that was approved by the board. So there's 5 years of line item history for the general fund. We also provide 5-year line item history of the grant fund as well. The grant fund, we go into greater detail. Not only do we provide line item details of the grant fund, but we also provide line item detail of individual grants. 5-year history of that as well. So that is also included in the budget book, and we do the same thing for our food services fund. There is line item detail of the food services fund. We're proud of our students, so we have an information section that talks about our students' academic achievements. We also include enrollment projections. So the budget book has 10 years worth of enrollment history, so you can find that there. It also includes the current year enrollment by school. And so you will see that as well in the budget book. We get a lot of questions of staffing and staffing history. The budget book includes 4-year summary of staffing changes. These summaries are by position, so you can identify any position in Norwalk Public Schools, and you could see the 5-year history of that position. This information is also aggregated by department. And so if you pick any department within the school systems, including schools and any other department in the school, you will see a 4-year staffing history with head counts for those years. So this is a 208-page document. We have tried to be, and this is not the first year we've done this. This is the 4th year we've put this budget book together. So there is a lot of information on this budget website. In addition to the budget book, the budget website also includes every single finance-related presentation on the budget. We had a presentation last night to the Student Governance Council. That presentation has already been uploaded. At the end of this meeting, tonight's presentation will also be uploaded. So you can go to this website and see all of the presentations that we've done beginning in September when we had the first joint public hearing in this room. So all of that information is available in the budget book. So we're really excited to be able to share that with you. Briefly, just about the Norwalk Public Schools. The district serves over 11,000 students across 21 schools. We have a workforce of more than 2,000 employees. Again, the staffing and enrollment data highlighted the scale and complexity of what we do because we are a large system within the city. A bit more about our students. This is our enrollment count as of October 1. So you could see our enrollment by race and ethnicity. You can see our information on free and reduced lunch. You'll notice that 55% of our students are categorized as receiving free and reduced lunch. 22% of our students are multilingual learners, and 19% of our overall students require special education services. So again, we share this because this also reflects the complexity and the needs within the district. So when you look at any public schools, beyond its enrollment count, you also look at its enrollment type, because the enrollment type drives what it takes to serve these students, because they all have unique needs. Again, this is looking at our MLL population compared to our SPED population. I'm comparing it to the state. So you'll see that this is a chart that shows the bars are our enrollment counts. I'll start with the MLL. You'll see that over the past, I think this goes to 2017, you can see a steady increase in our MLL population. You will notice that there was a drop as of October 1, 2025. This is typical. We're seeing this in the state. A lot of this has to do with some of the federal policies on immigration. So many districts are seeing a slight decrease in their MLL count and enrollment. The lines on this chart show as a percentage of our total enrollment what is the MLL. So the green bar, which is below, shows the state average. The blue bar up top is our district average. So you can see that in Norwalk Public Schools, as a percentage of our enrollment, we have a higher percentage of MLL students. What that means is that we have exponentially additional cost per student compared to other districts, compared to the state average. The same chart reflects the same information based on special education you'll see that our special education, those identified as having special education needs, you'll see the bars are also increasing, which is a trend within the district. Initially, when we presented this, when we started showing this data, you'll see that the blue line, which is the line below, shows that we had been for a while actually lower than the state average in prevalence rate. And prevalence rate means the number of students identified as having needs. But you'll see that the top line and the bottom line are merging and combining, which means that we are growing now to a rate that's matching the state. Our preference rate for a long time used to be lower than the state rate. But I believe when the state produces their number, will either be at par or we may exceed the rate of the state. And so again, this just talks about some of the challenges of funding. The last chart I'll show that's not a budget chart is our staffing distribution. You heard from the parents that have spoken, the needs at our schools. We are a people-centered business. The majority of our staff work in our schools. We have a number of positions that are locally funded. We do have a number of positions that are grant funded. So when you look at our locally funded positions, this budget includes a little over 1,600. But if you look at where they live, a majority of them are in elementary schools. So if you combine all of the schools and all of the school supported units, about 96% of all of our employee base work directly in schools or in support of schools. And that trend continues with the positions funded by grants. Positions funded by grants are very specific because the grant serves particular needs, and therefore you cannot assign grant funding to any positions. They have to be tied to the particular grant. But most of the grants that we pursue are grants that are in support of schools. And that's why you see majority of our grant funded positions work in schools, because that's the purpose of these grants. This allows us actually to offset the reliance on the local budget, because when we can leverage state grants and federal grants, it reduces the burden on the tax dollars of the city. Unfortunately, the trend that we're seeing in grant funding, and this will be evident for those that go into the budget book, we are seeing a decreasing in not only availability of grants, but also in the types of programs that they serve. So we find ourselves ineligible for some of the grants that are there, and the grants that we did receive, we're seeing increased competition because the dollars are less than what we've been accustomed to see. Now to the budget. So we follow a budget pattern similar to the city. It is a cyclical budget process. It includes extensive reviews by staff, both on the city side, on the board side. Similarly, on the city side, as you've heard Chairman Freire mention, we're getting ready to go into that process where the Board of Ed budget is combined with the other city departments and is also reviewed. But there's a cyclical pattern in that process. Once the board has approved its tentative budget, it's passed over to the city and it is reviewed in conjunction with all of the city departments. So this is the flow of our budget process. We shared the dates. These are the engagements that we've had up to date. This for us, and I've highlighted it. This engagement for us is engagement number 12. As I mentioned, we started back in September with Finance Committee meeting. In late September, we had our joint public hearing on the budget, and we have since had a number of workshops with our Board of Education. We had a town hall in November at 46 Concord, where we heard from parents. We conducted a budget survey where we got almost 500 responses from the community, and all of these information have helped us inform the budget. The next slide is similar to the slide that Jared shared, which talks about upcoming meetings. Next week, we have presentations with our Board of Education at their business meeting. We also have presentations to our school governance councils. Last night, we presented to the elementary school governance councils. Next Wednesday, we will be presenting to the secondary school governance councils. These meetings will take place at the Center for Global Studies. And so we are really out there sharing as much information as we can. The public hearing on February 12th was mentioned, and I believe I have a typo. I said March 26th. I believe I heard it's March 25th. is when the BET public hearing will be, so I'll update this slide as well. So just recapping, similar to what Jared did, where we are with this year. So you recall, this time last year, the Board of Education had approved a budget request of 9.7%, and it went into the budget process. In mid-March or April, well, February, the budget cap was set at 4%, which meant that in order for us to reconcile, we had to reduce from the request. So that initial amount that we had to reduce from our request to meet the cap was about 13.2 million. As Jared mentioned, there was the additional 3 million and the 1.5 million that was appropriated to the Board of Ed. So then that reduced the amount that we needed to reduce by 8.7. And so when all was said and done, the total appropriation to the Board of Ed was a little over 247 million. So year over year, that was about a 5.9% year over year increase to the board budget. Thank you. And so this is where we are today, and I'll talk briefly about what are the elements that put together this budget. So you'll see that, I hope you like the school bus. Thank you. And it has an NPS logo. So in April, we were, the Board of Ed, the BET approved 242 million, which is a 4%. Thank you for the $4.5 million additional funding that brought us to 247. And so we use that to build the request for this year, which is the 263.2 million budget. And so when you look at if you just focus on the blue columns there, they all look really to me right now. So what was approved was 242. The city appropriated an additional 4.5 million. That allowed us to reinstate 53.5 full-time equivalent positions, which brought us to 247. So all of the $4.5 million that we received went to fund salaries and benefits and restoration of positions. And so when we built the FY27 budget, we did include those positions because they're currently in our schools and exist in our schools. And so in building our school budgets, we have built the budgets with the assumption that those staffings are in. As you've heard from the parents that spoke today, and I believe you hear throughout, we have heard from our parents that they would like to maintain that current level of staffing. The Board of Ed heard that, and that was part of the basis of including that in the base budget for this year. Again, this is a breakdown of that $4.5 million that we received. It did allow us to bring back 53.5 full-time positions. About $1.5 million of that went towards reinstating positions at our high schools. You'll notice that CGS is not on here because CGS is funded, it has a unique funding formula because they received a grant that funds most of their positions. And so we were able to distribute that to all the other schools. The middle schools got just under 800,000, and then the balance went to our elementary schools. We were also able to restore positions in our special education department. So that's how we spent the $4.5 million that was appropriated to the Board of Ed. So this goes back to, and I believe Jared made a proper observation in how we have counted the base budget. And so this is kind of explaining our why. We understand the what, but why did we do this? We have been fortunate that for the past 3 years, through the collaboration of the BET and the council and the finance and claims with Greg Burnett's leadership and Mayor Reeling's leadership, for the past 3 years, after the budget has been approved and the cap has been set, the superintendent and the mayor have continued the conversation about adequately funding the Board of Ed. So in fiscal year 23-24, there was additional funding of about $2.5 million that was identified that could be used by the Board of Ed. In that particular year, the way that was managed was that there was an account. We identified a list of contracts, and we went back and forth in this process. We put together a list. The mayor and his chief of staff reviewed that list, and then we agreed to a list that totaled $2.5 million. What the city did, rather than give us the funding for the $2.5 million, we gave them the bills. And so those payments were made from the city accounts. The funds never came to the Board of Education. So in the following year, when we put together a budget, we never included that because it was never in our budget. And so we didn't. And so we were fortunate in FY 23-24 to receive the $2.5 million. Last year, in fiscal year 24-25, the mayor came up again and said, we will help you with $1.8 million. We went back and forth. We agreed. We put together a list of items that qualified for the funding source that this monies came from. And again, with the collaboration of our city partners, they set up account on the city budget. We provided them the bills and they paid these bills on our behalf. So in that regard, it was never part of our base, and there was no way for us to include it in our request. Last year, I highlight that in gray was a little bit different, as you heard from Mr. Smith explain, how that came through. Mr. Schmidt, sorry. As you heard from Jared, I'll just stick to first name. As you heard from Jared, the funding last year came in differently than the past 2 years. But the collaboration continued, the spirit of helping out the Board of Ed continued. However, last year, the $4.5 million funded positions as opposed to funding contracts. When that funding came through, it did not come, it came to us. The council approved it and the BET approved it, and an actual transfer was made from the city budget to the Board of Ed budget because the $4.5 million, as I described, pays for salaries and benefits. That money lives in each one of these schools and is part of the budget that we have to operate. So that is the why we included that in our base budget, because it's funding that we have, it funds positions that we have, and it is money that was appropriated and transferred into our books and our accounts. So when we built the budget, that was our starting point. And so when we say 6.5%, we're basing it based on the funding that we currently have for these individuals. So I know it's a little bit confusing. There's a question, why did you do it differently this year than the past 2 years? It's because the funding came to us differently this year than the past 2 years. So the funding came differently, the accounting is differently, and it's being presented differently, but that's why. There's no funny math or anything like that. I shared where the money came from, but that's really just to provide some understanding to the public that may not fully understand where the money come from. But I think at the end of the day, regardless of the percentage, what we're talking about is the funding amount. The $263 million is what the Board of Ed is asking the appropriation for this year, and we're hoping the city will view this request favorably. In terms of what's shaping the budget, what's driving, you kind of heard special education continues to increase. This year, we are looking at additional programs at our high schools. This will actually eliminate the need for us to outplace our students. And so we're going to invest some funding, put in this budget for these programs in-house, because we have to serve these students. So whether we serve them in-house or we either outplace them. And so based on the enrollments that we've seen and the identification rates, we believe that we can save the district and the city money if we invest in this in-house programs. We also were fortunate to receive funding from the state for a full day pre-K program at Wolf Pit and South Norwalk School. The grant doesn't quite fully fund for all the positions and all the students, and so included in the local budget is the supplemental funding to make that program whole. We have insurance costs. I think Mr. Schmidt talked about this as well. This year, the Board of Ed will be assuming funding for the liability, auto, and property insurance, which we haven't done in the past, so we have incorporated that into the budget. Jared and I have been working on, there's a formula on how we determine this, and I believe the figure I received from Jared's team is about $450,000. So we're including that in this budget because that was what we agreed to do. We've had conversations about school meals, and therefore school meals this year was a topic we heard from parents, and I heard one of our parents also speak to it as well. So we are funding school meals in this budget. The cost for that is about $2.3 million because the reimbursement rates that we get from the state, from the federal government for the meals does not fully cover the cost of the meals. And this is not unique to Norwalk. It's just how the funding mechanism works. And so we want to continue that funding, and therefore the budget includes that. Mr. Schmidt talked about staff pay and benefits. You have 6 unions, we have 8 unions, and therefore those are also included. We are excited about, I'm still calling it the South Norwalk School because it hasn't officially yet changed names, but it will soon be, that will be Shaw School. We're excited that we're adding a 4th grade at that school. With that come expenses. We are adding teachers and paraeducators to support the students that are in that school. And then similar to the city, we are also adjusting our retirement contributions for the 401A, and we also have ongoing contracts. Example, our busing contract, we spend $12 million a year on busing. This year's contract has gone up 8% for the 3 major contracts. This is actually less than what we're seeing from our counterparts. We actually extended this contract. Stanford busing contract, and Ms. Fayos cannot if I say the wrong number. I believe it went up somewhere between 15 and 17%. And I believe Stanford went up 15 and 17, and Danbury went up about 20%. And so when we saw those rates, we were able to actually negotiate an extension to this contract without going out to bid, because the contract had a clause. And at 8%, we were getting a really good deal, other than going out to bid for this. So those are some of the drivers that are shaping this budget. And then I believe this may be the last slide, but just to show you as a piece of the pie, 75% of our budget is salaries and benefits. Other student services include things like our out-of-district placement, our transportation expenses. Many of these are fixed. We did see some costs go down, and if you get an opportunity to look at the line item budget, you will see that our utilities gas went down, natural gas went down, electricity went slightly down, and that has to do with some of the energy savings we're seeing in some of the newer buildings, Cranberry. But we're also seeing the benefits of the HVAC systems that are being installed in our schools. They are much more efficient than the window units that we've been having. And so we're not seeing increases in every single line item. As you look at the budget, you will see some decreases in line items as well. And with that, again, I encourage members of the public, please follow the QR code to get to the budget website. And Mr. Freya, back to you.
Thank you very much. I think it was, both of you should be commended. Very, very, very impressive. And the amount of work that both of you do is just phenomenal. And I'm glad I don't do it. I'll open it up now. Both the Board of Ed Finance Committee, and if members of our Finance Committee have any questions, we could do comments. And that would be a good time to just discuss this.
I don't have a question right at the moment, but I had a couple of constituents. Can you please let them know where they can see your slides and Jared's slides? Because they're saying that they can't find the presentations.
Yeah, we'll post those and we'll put a message out.
Thank you.
They'll be posted tonight. This particular presentation is not.
Yeah, I think it's also important to differentiate between the two, because the Board of Ed is really very good at getting the message out and getting the details out. It's clearly this is the largest expenditure that the city has. So there's a lot more detail involved in it, and you guys are very much ahead of the game and getting your numbers up. Whereas on the city side, there's other complexities that we have to worry about. And again, it's compliments to you guys for getting it out so fast, because it's very, very difficult to do a budget early in the year. We hear sometimes that, well, why don't we just start earlier? Well, you can't start earlier because you don't have all the bills in, you don't have all the expenses in. And I also wanted to question people about what I heard last year was, well, why do we have so many surprises? We have surprises, but surprises all the time. And we shouldn't have any surprise. Well, it's impossible. That's the definition of surprise. You don't know what's coming. If we knew what all the surprises were, we wouldn't be in this situation. Because we start so early, we're definitely gonna have surprises, and I suspect that we will have some surprises as we go forward. That being said, does anybody else have any other questions that you, of either Jared or?
So Jared, can you elaborate on this school safety fund, the $600,000? What does that entail?
That's the police has a contingent of their department that they assign to go around to each of the schools throughout the day, every day. That are making sure that there's a security presence there, in addition to the SROs that are assigned. So it's beyond that.
So I understand, but like, what is the additional surveillance that is?
It's not additional. We just, over the past few years, we haven't budgeted it. And so in the past, what we've done is we've taken and we've done a carry forward from the previous year to fund it. And so now we're just acknowledging it and saying like this is going to be a recurring cost that we have every year. So let's get in the budget and put it there.
Okay, that's helpful,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
when it, at first, I thought it was like a new expense and I wasn't sure. I think one of the things that was really helpful, particularly around safety and security, was around our SROs, because pre-pandemic, we had a number of SROs and that number was reduced because of policing shortages at one point. And I know Mayor Reeling at the time worked really hard to increase that number, and we're back to pre-pandemic numbers. So I wasn't sure if that number was related to that or there were other factors. So thank you for clarifying.
You're welcome.
I can actually add something to that because I recently met with the chief and he had, he mentioned that after Uvalde, there was, and the mayor was very much behind this to add officers for security. So that might be a result of that.
Yeah, and I know this has nothing to do with finance, but I have to give a special kudos to our police department because they are incredible partners to us, and we really enjoy working with them. So we're just kudos to them and the work that they do. I have a second question.
Okay.
My last question. So at one point, there was conversation about a lot of the new developments and tax deferment, and eventually new tax revenue was going to come into the city, particularly with the mall, that would alleviate some of the taxpayer tension. Where are we with that? And are we going to see any relief in that this year?
Are you referring to to enterprise zone properties? Is that what you're talking about?
Sure.
Yeah. So we have a list of those that we track, and we can see, you know, when they're coming online. In most cases, the amount that they owe is phased in over a 7-year period. However, the mall was structured differently, where they were paying 50%, and then the other 50% is going to come online. I believe that other 50% will come online in FY28 from the mall, and so it's a significant amount of money, but in the grand scheme of the budget and our revenue, it's not nothing that's going to move the needle significantly.
But it was something I know at one point was discussed as a point of potential relief for the taxpayer. So I just wanted to see where we were with that and if it's coming soon, particularly because of some of the challenges that you articulated.
Right.
We're really facing this year.
One of the things that we're doing on the finance committee is spending time with the assessor, and wanted to have spoken to him about getting a list of those abatements that are rolling off. And as Jared says, unfortunately, some of them are special deals where it may not be available for a year or two down the road, but in the situation we're in, every nickel and dime helps. So we just don't want to take our eyes off the ball and let something like that go through. So I think that's something that we want to take a look at. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Okay. But I have a question for you though, is even on those abatements that are rolling off, are they subject to
the phase in for the revale on the revenue side?
No, they go up by 10% a year for the most part, other than the mall. And that's what it is.
Okay.
So the amount that they're contributing, once they get into the program, they start to contribute.
Yeah. Okay.
And that percentage increases by 10% a year.
Yeah. Anybody else have any other questions? Oh, go ahead. Should not go.
Okay, so, Linda, you talked about this quite a bit and, a parent brought it up. I think it's prudent to discuss why there's money available after the budget. It's not because the city's holding on to money and then, finally saying, yes, we're going to give you this money. It's because of the reconciliation and, and recognizing, what is going to be available. So I think, you talked a lot about it, Linda, but I think, Jared, it might be good for you to share from the city side, how those funds become available. Because it's important to realize, and there's also, a minimum budget requirement required by the state, which is why we were doing the specific contracts, right?
Mhm.
So that, the amount reported to the state, in the amount that funding for the Board of Ed is not higher because we can never decrease the budget, right? We can never go less than we've done the year before. It's a requirement by the state. So the city can help out with those one-time costs, right? That's what we were doing, but it was really smart to finally, put those in the budget. So can you just explain, to the public, how that money becomes available and why we can't just throw it into the budget to begin with?
Sure, and in a lot of cases, just the timing and when we find out that we have money. For example, there was last year in FY during 2024, we found out late in the game that the state had worked into its budget additional ARPA money for us, $5 million in ARPA money, and so that allowed us to take a look at some of the requests from the Board of Education and what we could afford to do out of that $5 million. And we ended up doing 1.8 million for the Board of Education, and then the rest went to other city projects. And so a lot of times that's the issue, because the state budget and sometimes some deals like that don't happen till late in the process. And honestly, the state budget is not well aligned with the timing of when municipalities have to adopt our budget. So there are times when we're projecting and budgeting grants, and we don't know for sure whether or not the amount that we have in there is correct or not. And so we end up making changes afterward to account for that. And there's a couple of grants. There's one grant in particular that doesn't, we don't find out about it until August. So during that next fiscal year, whether or not we're going to get it in that fiscal year. And so, things like that. And in the past from that grant, we've gotten $1.5–2 million in that range. And we don't find out that we have it until the fiscal year has already started. So that's a lot of times that's what happens, and that's why that's why those funds are committed and have to be committed after the process, after the formal adoption of the budget.
Sometimes it's staff as well. We historically taken a conservative approach on our budget. We budget for full staff. We all know we always have full staff. So think of some of the larger departments, fire and police, they can't just automatically replace people who leave. They have to wait for academy slots. Okay, right? So they just bring somebody in, and then you add in, you have a full-time HR director for a while. Think about Jess Onachek. left, right? What was it, 4, 5, 6 months before we were able to earn J. So you've got a gap of X thousands of dollars in the director level salary. When you think about those things, they add up over the course of the year. It can be a fairly substantial savings.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Yep.
And I have to say that, Harry and I, like, really, he was, amazing at working collaboratively and saying, you know, let's see what things look like. Let's see if we could bring additional resources. And I'm hoping, Mayor Smith, that we can continue that, level of collaboration. I think the biggest challenge for us is that we have to reconcile a budget that first week in June. And, we always want to be in a place where we maintain stability in the organization. And one of the biggest challenges, although we're very grateful for the funding we receive, is the instability that it creates in not knowing. And the importance of maintaining stability so that our teachers, paras, and other personnel stay focused on what we want them, which is most important, which is the kids. So I'm hoping that we can, like Mr. Freer said, find creative ways to think about the budget process moving forward between now and the end of this academic year so that we can avoid some of that unwanted tension that is created and the uncertainty that inevitably makes us lose personnel that is critical, particularly right now when finding qualified staff in shortage areas. Even right now, we have vacancies because we can find, because we're competing against the entire state and surrounding states for hearts of staff areas. So anything that we can do to kind of find a way to eliminate some of that, we would really appreciate it. I know it's not an easy task, but it's something that I hope that we can continue to find ways to do it better.
Can I ask you a question? Sure. Do you know whether or not the district will get the 10 million? I know last year, plus the city would get $10 million that would go towards the budget.
That's been budgeted. Yeah, that's been in the state budget. So we will have that $10 million in FY27 as well.
So there's no uncertainty around that funding for this fiscal year 20.
No more than any other state funding. I guess, is the way I put it.
Specific on the state.
There is.
Yeah.
There are some strings.
There are strings attached to it. And as I think you all know, we had to make room for the Board of Education funding by putting that money toward transportation costs and road costs. And so that's what we did. So it's not, and we have other priorities, and the mayor and I and others on her team will be talking about the priorities for that $10 million for next year when we start having further conversations about the FY27 budget.
So we hope the Board of Ed is part of that priority.
You know, along those same lines too, another question was, I noticed that there was $3 million sale of some assets of buildings. Is there opportunity, you know, I think on the expense side, you guys have done a phenomenal job on whittling down the expenses and keeping them as close to the bone as possible. But on the revenue side is really where we have an issue, because our tax base is not, where in the last couple of years has not been able to really give us the funds that we need. So we've got to look at other places for revenue, such as possibly selling off assets that the city may have, getting more revenue from the state. I think particularly in the area of MLL and SPED, there's an opportunity where we have to get together with our delegation to put the full court press on those guys, because, you know, if we take a look at those, even though we look at the average for the state and we're well above the average for the state, that tells me volumes that we're carrying the load for the rest of the state. And that's just not fair.
I don't disagree. And I think when we look at surrounding states, the way that they formulaically set up state funding into local municipalities is very different per pupil based on the need of the child. I was quite surprised, and I was saying this to Mr. Freire when I came to Connecticut and realized that our state doesn't fund a municipality better, particularly for high need students compared to surrounding states in the tri-state area. So there's a lot of positive work that could be done. I know we have a group of parents in the community that are actively researching this and trying to find creative ways to advocate at the state level so that they can reconsider how they are funding, particularly high needs and in that area, special education and et cetera. Because we have, that's where our biggest challenge in terms of our budget is, because we have so many services we need to provide that are mandated. They're not optional. If we don't provide them, then we have other litigations that we have to deal with that cost us more. And I think that if we can get relief in that area, it will benefit our taxpayers significantly.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I have been tapped into a group of mayors who are working together to advocate for more a different formula for ACS funding that does focus more on the needs of special education and MLS students. So I'll be working on that. And I would like you to join me in advocating together in Hartford for, I think we really have to advocate for more special education funding and partnering with other communities. I think, Stanford deals with some of the same issues that we do, because with the ECS funding, it's so, one of the main things is it's based on your grand list and your property values. And they're very high here in Norwalk and in Stanford. So we lose out in that way. And so if we go together as a team to advocate in Hartford, and work with our state delegation, I think that those are some of the things that we have to do. I think that we deserve more special education funding from the state, absolutely. And you look at this presentation, right? And I'm, going back to one of the pages, 80% of our revenue comes from our taxpayers. Yep. And, and our taxpayers are really feeling, the pressure. It's very hard. So we need more help. We really do. So we've got to work together to make that.
Yeah, and just to add to that, and I've talked to the mayor about this, I talked to Linda briefly about it. I have started working with the, it's called the Education and State Finance Project. They do a lot of, it's a nonprofit, they do a lot of the analysis of education funding, state education funding. And the mayor's point, changes in the ECS grant are not going to be very meaningful to the city of Norwalk. And it, every dollar counts. But I can tell you that if you put $1 million into excess costs versus $1 million into the education cost sharing grant, we get about 15 times more money through if the money goes into excess costs.
But is the excess cost fully funded?
No.
And that's the problem.
And so,
ECS is finally fully funded, but
right.
Excess cost is not.
Right. And so I've asked them to run a history of how much we have been shorted as a result of it not being fully funded, and also to do a projection of if it were to be fully funded, how much additional revenue we could expect. And
also rethinking how we are providing out of funding for the different needs that we have in the community, right? Special education costs, MLL costs, because even last year, the amount of funding that we received for special education outplacement was reduced. And the formula shifted, and it had an impact in terms of how much revenue we were receiving back that we were outputting to provide services. And coupled with that, the cost of providing services for outplacement and other special education areas has increased significantly after the pandemic, particularly because, you know, shortage creates a supply and demand issue, right? So the costs have increased and the revenue that we receive to mitigate that cost has not increased in the same way. Actually, in many ways, it has been reduced.
Question. I think this is probably to both C and CFOs. You know, with respect to the inflationary drivers that were identified in the BOE's budget, is there some room for some collaboration? Now, someone mentioned that co-op mentioned something about waste and recycling. And given the fact that there's a new organics law, and so is there a way to maybe possibly work together to kind of maybe try to reduce the pricing or get better pricing as a result of working together instead of working separately in these contracts?
For utilities, we actually do. We work together with the city on the utilities, and as I mentioned in the numbers that we're seeing, we're actually seeing a reduction in the utilities. So that's an area that we already collaborate together with in terms of pricing and looking at economies as well.
Right, but I guess when it comes to waste, organic waste, food waste, that sort of thing, is there a way to kind of work together to be able to have a unified contract where you can maybe negotiate better terms, have better pricing? That way it might free up some funds across the board.
The answer is yes.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have, after the efficiency study, one of the things that we have been doing is taking the recommendations from the study to engage in collaborative processes that reduce costs for the city, because some of the services might be in kind or services that we provide. And we reduced costs in that fashion, particularly with the maintenance of facilities and the operationalization of that work. We've done a lot in that area. I know Mr. Wasmani and Jared, they've talked about like Munis, for instance, and different systems that we share, and that creates cost savings as well. So everywhere that we can potentially see an opportunity to do that, we have been doing it, and we're still developing some of these partnerships, and we will continue to do it because it makes sense.
And I know that there have been conversations between the city and the schools regarding composting in particular. And we're also looking at ways that we can use this NIPS money that we get, the little bottles of alcohol, to see if there are ways that we can, you know, leverage that money in order to use it for additional composting or other ways of other things, waste management.
Excellent. So I'm assuming you guys have been working with Jody Trent or sustainability. She's probably the one who's been working in collaboration with the district. I'm assuming.
Yeah, Ms. Bayos's office has been working.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Excellent. Okay.
Yeah, Jody and also Vanessa and DPW. Yes.
Thank you.
I think also going along the same lines that we've said a number of times, you and I have talked about this, I don't know, countless times, is about taking that efficiency study off the shelf, dusting it off, and maybe even looking into consultant that would come in and give us another look at that. And I think that efficiency study was good, but the standards that are out there today, it was very superficial.
I think it's also worth noting that that efficiency study is now 3 years old. And I think that, technologies have improved and we're not in the same place that we were in 3 years ago. That doesn't mean that everything's great now, but it is to say that things have gotten better. I do appreciate two things. One, I think a renewed look at the efficiency study at the ways, frankly, the board and the city can come together, especially considering not only the demands, and I think the rightful demands lots of parents have sort of asked of us, but I also think it's just a matter of literally making government more efficient as we're in, and I think the superintendent kind of alluded to this earlier, a situation where the commercial revenue versus the residential revenue is frankly backwards. and it should be closer to even. And as we work harder and smarter to bring in more commercial opportunities, and as frankly as a number of properties are beginning to come offline in the abatement thing, which as Jared said, that's a 7-year process where actually the amount that gets paid in tax increases over time, not decreases. So it's not just a 7-year forgiveness program. But I do think that's something that the city is going to be looking for, especially when it comes to the operating budget, is an environment where we can not only make sure that adequate services or more than adequate services and teachers and everything are provided to the Board of Education, but also that on the city side, we don't lose a lot of really important resources and positions that are, in as competitive an environment, I think that was brought up, regarding various professionals in the Board of Education. The city experiences those same kinds of pressures. I can't begin to emphasize how important it is to have a really great traffic and mobility and parking department. It affects all of our lives, fire, police. Each of these places are grounds for competition across the state and the tri-state. And it's something that I know we think about all the time, and I don't want to lose the forest for the trees on this at all.
I actually had the efficiency study in my hands today. So,
I have it on a shelf.
And I would like to understand the hours because we've been using it proactively, so it's a tool that we have been using and we've been working with the city.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people don't see the behind the scene work that happens in collaboration with the Board of Ed and the city. And I welcome that because one of the challenges that I see, the work that happened then and the personnel expectations, because we've lost funding over time, we've lost a lot of personnel that then were seen as essential to do the work. And now we're struggling to meet certain expectations because we don't have enough people to do the work well or at the caliber that I think our students deserve. I think.
So I wanted to piggyback on the ECS funding issue. I do have, well, I did, because now Mr. Howard White will be taking over the chair check-in meetings monthly with CABE, the Connecticut Association Board of Education. They are planning a group of chairs to go up to Hartford to have the discussions with the ECS funding, and not just for special education, but for all students, all education. I do look forward to when you schedule that bus, Mayor Smith, to let us know the date and we can all hop on with you and go up to Hartford and fight, for all of that funding. My question is for Jared and also for Linda. When you talk about the tentative approved Board of Education budget, how off or how different is Jared to Linda's number? Because, that says a lot too. Are you guys thinking the same way, having these conversations, different levels of thought processes?
So Luna and I met last week and talked about this and talked about our differences. We both understand. We understand that why we're calculating things the way that we are and why it's different. And in the end, as Luna said, you're asking for a certain dollar, and so that in the end, that's what's going to have to be approved or not. I think it's just important for the BET Common Council, for everyone to understand what's in those percentages. As long as they understand that the schools are carrying a lower percentage, and here's why, and the city is looking at it differently and looking at it as a higher percentage, and here's why. As long as everybody knows that and they understand why we're looking at it differently, I think it's fine. And in the end, what gets approved is an overall dollar amount, not a percentage increase.
The dollars for the city are not going to change. The percentages of whether the city's paying for it or whether the Board of Ed is paying for it is where the difference comes.
Right, and the thing that's, as I said, the thing that's causing the difference, and Luna talked about it as well, is what you're using, what you're assuming in the base year, that what's in that base year budget. And we have a difference of opinion, on what should be included.
So I think to your point, Dan, and Jared mentioned this, separate from the percentage, I think we have articulated, the board has articulated in the request, this is how much we need to fund the programs that we currently have. Whether it's 4%, whether it's 9%, to your point, Jared, it's a dollar amount. And that to me is the more important number than the percentage. And what does it pay? We've talked about the drivers. And so I think I agree with you, Jared. I think as long as both sides understands how that number is calculated, but I think the bigger issue is what is the number. And I think there's no argument in what our number is that we put together. And that's kind of the conversation with the board.
Quick question for the one that when you put together the analysis that leads to the budget, I saw that there's the inflationary drivers on the expense side, but do you ever analyze the affordability side with respect to residents? Is that something that's ever taken into consideration when you propose, like when you make a request? And I say it just because we all know families are facing household inflationary pressures, utilities pressures, that sort of thing. That's something that's ever part of the analysis.
Yes, so I think you heard from some parents, and they gave the example of class sizes. So when we put together the school budgets, our contract, our teacher's contract specifies the number of students per class. And so as we look at each individual school, there are schools where we have consolidated classes taking that into account, that yes, it's nice if there were only 18 students in this classroom. However, we can go from 4 classes to 3 classes and also maintain the contractual agreements. So yes, so we look at those things because we are also cognizant of the cost, our parents, our residents and taxpayers as well. So it's not just a wish list that doesn't take into that account. We're very, very cognizant of that as well when we put these budgets together.
Understood. Is that something that that's documented? Anything that can be, you kind of pinpoint, look at, it might be somewhere, I don't know, maybe back in the budget book, anywhere you can identify where I can kind of take a look to see whether it's a summary or something to document, some of the initiatives when it comes to this that are being done. Or that's something that's never been done before. It could be done.
No, it's done. So when we do our school-based budget, we do, I don't know if you were here last year, we actually recorded a video of that meeting. I don't know if we did Fox Run, and you saw Ms. Carla on there working with the budget team and the finance team, and we're talking about class size. And we say, so we've documented that, and I think we have videos on our website. But we could give you a school-based budget that you could see kind of like, because in the budget we talk about the contract class sizes, the enrollment, number of sections, and all that. So it is done. I'd be happy to provide that.
And you can make an easy comparison from the prior year to this current year, and you will see the drastic shift in terms of our class size numbers. Because in order to reduce costs, that was one of the things that we had to do.
And the reason I ask because there's families at different income levels that can afford higher property taxes, right? We have parents that say, well, I wouldn't mind paying more, but there's other families that we all advocate that say, I can't do this. So that's my concern, is to make sure that's being communicated to the residents or to the families and stuff. So that's the reason.
I think at the same time, that's why I think the mayor and others talked about the importance of going to the state.
Yeah.
And talking about how to more effectively fund schools. Because also there are things that are beyond our control that at the federal level and the state level, we are mandated to do by legislation and federal policy. So we can't just come in and say, we're making this change just because we are very heavily regulated and we have a lot of mandates that are not funded at the state or federal level that we are obligated to fulfill. And we also have to take into consideration what the research says and what is best practices to ensure that students and staff have the best amicable environment so the students can succeed. And it's a delicate balance. And we are at a point right now that if we tilt anymore, we're going to break the system. So that the results that we have been achieving and we're so proud of might be very difficult to attain because our kids are not gonna be in the environment that we want and our parents expect from us.
Right, and my thing too is that I don't want to break the families economically. So that's something that I know, and I said this before last year, I said it to the members, the students are my constituents, the families, the parents, teachers are my constituents. So, you have to kind of consider the broader picture, right? And so that's something that I always constantly have in the back of my mind as I'm kind of going through the budget process, looking at the needs and understanding what the families are going through just generally.
I just want to add a couple of things here. One is, I know this is something that typically happens around budget time. I think, I can't remember if this is something that typically happens from the BOE side, but I know it happens from the city side where usually there's a sort of a spreadsheet that says at the number requested or at, certain levels, what the impact is going to be per family percentage, the mill rate. That way it's spelled out in terms of what the impact is. I also think that, and I think this is something that both Councilmember Lopez and the superintendent hit on, which is the unfairness, frankly, of the fact that education is funded for the most part by property taxes. That is an inherently unfair thing. And I think everyone at this table can pretty much agree on that, and that the reason why it's imperative that we go to the state and advocate for as much money as possible while acknowledging that our state delegation fights hard for us. I think it's, I think even they would agree with the fact that Norwalk deserves more education funding, considering that Norwalk is a microcosm of Connecticut, which is a microcosm of the United States, which is that there is enormous income inequality, there is enormous wealth inequality in Norwalk, and that creates a mirage up at the state level that is something that's hard to fight against, because on the one hand we have wealthier sections in Norwalk, on the other hand we have many families for whom putting food on the table is a genuine struggle and shouldn't be. The fact of the matter is that, as the mayor said, 80% of the funding does come from us, and that is inherently unfair in a state where which has one of the largest income inequality gaps in the country. I also think I want to transition though, and I want to commend Jared and Lunda for a change that happened to the charter that's going to take effect this year, which is actually the budget calendar is going to change. And some of the dates have been shifted so that some of the budget reveals in terms of school-based budgets is actually going to happen earlier this year. So parents are going to have an earlier opportunity to see some of those changes. I think a lot of, and that was something that a number of my colleagues on the council and some former colleagues really fought for in terms of charter changes along with members of the Board of Education. And I do think it would be worth addressing, and maybe Jared and Linda, whichever one of you wants to take it, how those changes and what parents can expect to see, because that is going to be something new this year. And I don't think that's been addressed yet. So,
well, I just want to.
Next year, right?
Next year.
It's next year. I'm sorry.
Next
If you
year,
think
yeah.
this year, I meant next year.
We agree with everything you
Yeah.
said, but I think it's going to be.
It's not gonna happen.
Thanks, everybody, for, unless there's another question.
I have a question. Looking at the tentative approved BOE budget, and I know I'm new to the process, so forgive me if this question is a bit naive, but there's a 7.8% budget increase. And I know you guys discussed that there was an increase in music funding. But the special education funding didn't see the same increase. I'm not sure if this is a question for Jared or for Lunda, but how is it determined between music? And I'm not saying one is more important than the other, because I think they're both equally important, but how is it determined to increase the music budget where the special education budget doesn't see the same increase?
So that.
So this is specifically related to the $4.5 million. The special education, when we received that funding, we had already made other reductions in other areas to fund special education. There were special education administrators that were reinstated. When we did that, there was a shortfall of 300 to complete that full reinstatement of special education. So what we used from the $4.5 million, that 230,000, was to add to the additional funding to reinstate all of the special ed administrators in the budget. So that's not the full funding. That was just to make them whole. I believe there's a total, which, I think there's about maybe 1.3 million dollars for sped that was needed to reinstate everything. We fell short and we applied 200 of this 4.5.
And on the music increase, how was that increase determined?
It was the reinstatement. It wasn't an increase. It was reinstatement of positions. There was about 1.9 million dollars reinstated because as part of the $4.5 million that the board, that the city provided, we also had to identify $2 million in local funding, non-school funding to reduce and to allocate towards the other programs. So part of that $2 million that we reduced in other areas went to reinstate some of those band and strings positions and the sped positions. And so this is only a portion of that funding that went towards that. That answers the question.
Thank you.
Anybody have any other comments or questions?
I just want to add one thing.
I was just gonna say, I'd like to give you the last word.
No, I'm remembering what some of the couple council members said last year is, and this speaks to what you were saying, is we want to be careful that we're not hurting the very students, the very families that we're trying to help, right? By increasing taxes so much. So it's such a challenge, right? And I know Mayor Rilling was committed to this. I am committed to this. I was a teacher in our schools. All my kids went through our schools. And I think that we all feel the same way. We want to give every cent we can to our schools. But I think you hear what the challenges are, right? And we have to fund our police department and our fire department, some of the things I spoke about in the beginning. We have to keep our public safe, right? So there's so many challenges and so many needs. And going back to, the efficiency study, one of the areas where the city's really, really struggling and has been underfunded is with our IT department, which is so important, right? And Ralph, I'd love to pick your brain. And I know, there's been some discussions, for years about how maybe we can join together. We don't have a chief information officer on the city side. Our internet's down all the time. So, that's an area that the city's really struggling and we really need to make an investment there. So that's an area with, and I know we have different needs, right? And there's, such challenges around that. But, again, I really want to continue working together, open the dialogue, improve communications, get all the stakeholders at the table and work together because these are our kids.
Thank you.
So there's the last word.
Do I have a motion? Mr. Lopez? All in favor? Great. Thank you very much, everybody. It's been very
Thank you.
useful.